We are getting close to the fourth quarter of 2022 already. Can you believe how fast it's going? Well, what we really want to know is, how are the price charts looking, right? How are prices doing in the crypto market? As well as we'll take a look at some macro numbers to give us a feel for what might happen Q4 this year. For that, we have Paul from Defina joining us to look at just that. Welcome to the Crypto Rain channel. I'm your host, Jay Rain. If you like money in crypto and you're looking for a seasoned investor's take on the crypto market, join the Rainmaker family. Do note, I'm not a financial advisor. Paul is not a financial advisor either. I'm a crypto investor myself. Paul invests in all kinds of different markets. And also note that a lot of the stuff I bring up, I do own. And, I disclose what's going on with that. But on this show, which usually airs on Thursdays, we take a lot of viewer suggestions. So a lot of the ones we'll be reviewing today are from viewers who watched last week and suggested what they want us to look at this week. Special shout out to our Patreon members. We do have a private Discord that our Patreon members get access to. Now make your rain on that like button, strap in for the show, and let's welcome Paul.
Hey guys, glad to be back. I'm back from holiday. I'm hoping traders are back from their holidays and ready to go and check these markets out and see what's going on.
Yeah, you brought that up last week that a lot of traders go on holidays during this time, right? So they take a week, 2 weeks off, sometimes a month off during August, September timeframe.
Yeah, I mean, August is a dead month, really. It's usually one where people don't trade. And I don't know what it's like in the US, but in Europe, we have the holiday cycles, the school holiday cycles that seem to affect everybody. And so basically from August, the whole of August is usually very quiet, low volume. So you've got to kind of discount what's going on around there. And then September time, traders come back and they start to look at what's going on and take positions. So you can have higher volatility in August because the market's thinner. But we could also look at when the traders come back and volume starts to go up, then, we can also see some big moves happen as well. And some of the biggest crashes that have happened in the market have happened in September and October time. So the market can get a little bit nervous from an equity market perspective around September and October because of the big moves that have happened. But it's worth pointing out that over the past, if we go back 10 years or so, we've had very low foreign exchange volatility. And I know everyone here is looking at crypto, but all the asset markets do influence themselves or each other. And we've had very, very low volatility for such a long time. And now we've got very high volatility going on. So we're seeing very big moves happening in the foreign exchange markets. And this is catching people out. And this is very much a cycle. It's something to be expected in crypto, bonds, currencies, commodities, whatever it is. Things go in cycles. So they get really boring sometimes for a long time. And then you think they're never going to move. And then all of a sudden you have these massive moves. So it's really important to bear in mind that they're big cycles that are at play. And I think we're going to have a very exciting end of the year or market towards the end of the year. And certainly into next year, I think things are going to become even hotter. So at the moment, there's a lot of bears out there and we're having to sort of ride out this bearish period. But from a kind of long-term cyclical perspective, things should start to turn up at some point. We have not been able to really load the boat, as we were saying a few sort of sessions ago, because the markets haven't fully aligned to allow us to say that. We have seen a low in the crypto markets, but we've also seen other factors that are pushing against the crypto markets, like rising interest rates, rising bond yields, the rising dollar, and general tensions and corrections in what we call risk-on markets. So there's the environment means we still have to be very cautious, and that can be a bit frustrating, especially if you're kind of a new trader and you want to deploy your capital and you're expecting 2, 5, and 10x on your crypto trades. It's not really like that. You have to wait for the right time. And in this environment, I think we have to be especially careful because when everything's moving up, you can just pick anything. But when the markets are as fragmented as they are now. Even between Bitcoin and Ethereum, the market's fragmented. Even the two heavyweights are fragmented. It means it really does matter which one you pick. So we have to, that's why I use charts. Technically, Bitcoin has looked less bullish than Ethereum. Ethereum is moving higher. Bitcoin is still under pressure. Now, whether that means Ethereum will then drop, which is what we were talking about last week, will it drop, buy the rumor, sell the fact? I'd be interested in your take on that, because I think you've got a better handle on the fundamentals as to what will drive that. But certainly that's what we're seeing from a technical point of view. So to summarize, we still have to be cautious because not all the pieces of the puzzle are in place yet for a major rally. But that doesn't mean there aren't opportunities. And I think as time goes on, those opportunities will increase. So we just still have to be there.
Yeah, I would love if you would share with us what macro things that you're looking at, like where's the dollar going, some other things, because we've been watching the dollar for a while and it's been at record highs. And usually once the dollar reverses and reverses strongly is when we see a lot of people come back in to risk on assets like crypto. Risk on meaning they're willing to take riskier bets like equities and crypto. So while the dollar's strong, a lot of times they're holding it in other things.
Yeah. So first of all, why is the dollar strong? The dollar is strong because of this word inflation that's being bandied around a lot. And what's driven inflation has been commodity prices, energy prices, food prices, etc. But a lot of those have also dropped as well. So commodity prices have dropped quite aggressively. So the numbers that the Federal Reserve, who set the US interest rates, have been talking about, those numbers are going to look a lot better, I think, in the coming weeks and months. And that's what we need to encourage a risk on trade. Now, whilst that's before that happens, before the market changes its view about potential short-term inflation. By the way, I think long-term inflation will stay, but I do think we'll go into a reversal cycle, given what I'm seeing in the commodity markets. This is a chart here that we've got of the dollar index. And I was bullish around this point here in July 21. The market was basing. We've moved into this really long-term trend. Around 108 was my target, which it hit. And then we saw this retracement. I thought perhaps that's the top. I tried to be smart and pick the top, which is never a good idea. It wasn't absolutely the top, but we're having another leg higher. And this leg it's broken the previous high, which I have to respect as a technical analyst. I thought we could get to maybe 110. But I feel more uneasy about buying it here than I did before. So I'm a bit more wary about buying it at this level of the trend, at this point in the trend, rather than when we were looking at it much further down here. Now, the reason why I am less keen to buy it, I can show you in 10-year yields. So this is the US 10-year yield market, which is the amount of interest you get if you buy 10-year US government bonds being one of the safest products out there. You're going to get your money back, or you'd hope so, wouldn't you, if it's the US government? Although during the financial crisis of 2008, even governments were coming under pressure. So what's been going on is the yields have been going up, and this has been an underpinning factor to the US dollar. And we saw this retracement, which was the retracement that we got in the US dollar, and there's another leg up. So this next leg up hasn't actually taken out the previous high. It's a little more muted in terms of its trend. So a trend that is reversing a correction is not as good as one that's moving into a new high. So that's why I'm a little bit wary, because the yield market is not matching what the dollar is doing. So therefore, I'm slightly cautious. I won't go to it now, but I'm also looking at short-term interest rates. And the short-term interest rate futures market looks between 3 months and below 2 years. And what it's saying is that interest rates could go to about 4% by the beginning of next year. But they're also saying by sort of September next year, they're also going to be at 4%. So there's this like, well, hang on a minute. If inflation is going to continue out of control, why isn't that curve, 4%, 5%, 6%, 7%? Why isn't it going up and up and up? And so the market is kind of backing away from this very, what we call hawkish view about US rates. And that's happening very slowly. So there's been this shift. So that's why I'm kind of backing off this bullish view on the US dollar and looking at the asset markets like the crypto markets and saying, well, look, we had this big panic in June where everything crashed and then it's rallied. Some have continued up and some have just sat around. That's kind of bullish in some ways because they could be creating a major low. But it's not encouraging me to go into the US dollar. So we're in this kind of middle ground where we've got to kind of wait and see. Sometimes they say, you know, square is a position or sitting on your hands is a position. And it's what that means is staying out of the market sometimes is a good conscious decision until things become clearer. But as far as what I can see goes, the yield markets are perhaps hitting a point where they might not go much higher, and indeed they might even correct. So the inflationary story may be close to saturation, and then we'll see how the Fed will react. You can't necessarily look at what the Fed say because the Fed will just talk about how they're going to combat inflation, because it's very easy to talk a good game and talk to the market and say, yeah, we're going to stamp it out. We're definitely going to raise rates. And people who've been in the markets a long time know that what they say and what they do are usually or can be two different things. So look at what they do rather than what they say, or actually look at the market, what the market's looking at, because the market is doing what I'm doing, looking further ahead and saying, well, hang on a minute, these commodity prices are dropping and that's the basis of inflation. I'm not saying it's gone away, but it's certainly taken a lot of the heat out of it. The dollar's much stronger. That's affecting US companies, and it's also affecting consumers in the US. With all of that going on, do you really want to be raising interest rates even higher? I mean, look at in the UK, our energy prices are probably in a much worse state than they are in America. There's a lot of businesses that are having to fold because they can't afford their gas prices. So is that really an environment where rates are going up? I don't think so. Something's got to happen. So there has to be some form of reaction. There has to be some form of intervention. Well, I say there has to be. There should be. That's normally what happens. So we'll see if there is, and if there is, that could be really, really bullish. So if there is some form of control on the energy prices and the dollar starts to fall, then we could be looking at major rallies. Now, again, I think given that we're in September and given that we're still in this very cautious period, we can't say let's just go in full on risk on. It's just not the right environment. But I'm looking for that opportunity more than perhaps other people are, because there's a lot of people who are just looking for a crash. Crash is possible, anything's possible, but putting the pieces together, I'm trying to maintain a balanced, optimistic view rather than just automatically defaulting to a pessimistic view. So we need the Fed to change their mind. I think there's some CPI numbers coming out that will be very interesting. I think the markets are going to be focused on those. So when these CPI, which is inflation numbers, consumer price index numbers, when they come out, we'll see how the market reacts to that. There could be a one number that does a complete sea change of sentiment, and so I'll have to check when that is. But if it's ahead of next week, then it could really see a sea change in the market.
Yeah, would you mind breaking down and taking a look at some of the majors in the crypto space?
Yeah.
Let's look at Bitcoin, Ethereum, and then let's also look at Cardano.
Yeah, absolutely. So Bitcoin is, as I say, it's underperforming Ethereum, underperforming the broader markets, which is a shame. This was the trend line that we were following from a few weeks back, and it sat on it, and it broke that trend line, which was a bad sign. And then it came back to the next level of support, which was 19,666, which is a key level. It's a key resistance point, which is why I was looking at it as support. And it sat on that as well, which wasn't great. So these little consolidations where the market just goes sideways, they are usually what we call continuation patterns. And what happens is the market goes down, consolidates, and then goes down in a very similar way to the way it went into the consolidation. So this is called a pennant formation, and we are now sitting on another major support point. So it's literally stopped today at 18,595, which was this support from here. Now, as you can see, there's not much below that. There's only this previous low of 17,545. So, you know, until we see some form of reversal of this trend, that this trend being from 25,169, you know, I've got to remain cautious, because it's not an upward trend. It could be forming a much larger reversal pattern, but we need more evidence. We need to see this reverse out, it get back over 19,666, and head back into the meat of this consolidation, which would be over 20,000. So I'm definitely neutral on this. I'm going to have to sit on the sidelines and wait. And if anything, I'd be braced for more downside, given the way it's broken this big level here.
Right.
And so with Ethereum, look how night and day difference. I mean, it hasn't even come back to its breakout buy point, which is 1280. So we talked about this 1280 level. Now, there is a major event going on with it, and perhaps this will snap back towards Bitcoin rather than Bitcoin snapping up towards this. So something is wrong here. Something is out of whack, because in any bull market, you expect a synchronized move up in assets or a synchronized move down. And what we're seeing is a fragmentation. So when you get that, it can continue for a long time, but then you'd expect them to fall into line. So whichever is the major direction. So, I mean, some people will say that this is looking like a head and shoulders pattern. There's left shoulder, head, right shoulder. Whilst it does look like a head and shoulders pattern forming, which would be bearish for Ethereum, you normally get a head and shoulders pattern at the end of a trend. So that's once it's trended for a long time. Now, that doesn't mean it can't go down. It just means that compared to Bitcoin, this is trading in a far more bullish fashion. And I would, on a spread, prefer it for now. And I'd also say it's not going to negate a bullish trade, which this trend line indicates the bull trend for it, until this breaks. And so it would at least have to get below this 1374 level to confirm that. And then below that, you've got 1280. So you've got two really good levels of support that it can hold before we even turn fully negative on it, which would, I think, a close below 1280 is where I'd throw in the towel for the short term and then wait for a longer term base to form. So this is looking okay, you know, much better. So with the sort of preface of being cautious and, you know, this event that's coming up for Ethereum potentially having a negative impact on a, you know, buy the rumor, sell the fact, I'd say that this is, if we weren't looking at Bitcoin, it looks like the trend is good. It looks fine. So whilst it's above this trend line, whilst it's above 1280, I want to stay bullish on it. And I think that's kind of fair enough. But it is also consolidating. It also does need to get over this 1720 level, which it's failed once here, it failed again. It got close to it and it failed again. So very short term, we're just stuck in this short term range, this consolidation. If I sort of zoom in a bit more, you can see this is the high, this is the low, and it's trading between these key points. So for the next trend direction, from a short term sort of week to week perspective, we need to see either one of those break. If it breaks this high, that would be a great sign, really good. If it can get through 1720, that's been pivotal and really significant. So so cautiously bullish on Ethereum, I would say. That the chart looks much better than Bitcoin, that's for sure.
Yeah, I wanted to share my thoughts on the fundamentals behind what's going on with ETH and the merge. And like you say a lot, buy the rumor, sell the fact. There's this interesting thing that happens for those that are new and haven't heard us talk about that. When some big event is supposed to come up for a crypto project, right? ETH being one of the biggest crypto projects in the world. And it's an event that actually people have been looking forward to since 2015. And they're calling it the ETH merge, but essentially it's ETH 2.0, moving from a proof of work mechanism, which isn't very energy efficient, to a proof of stake mechanism, which is much more energy efficient. It'll allow faster transactions per second, lower gas costs. In other words, lower transaction costs for those transacting on it. And it's not the full update, but it's a big chunk of the update required for those things to happen. And so there's a lot of anticipation leading up to that. And normally what happens is, in the anticipation or the rumor of, gosh, this is going to happen, the price generally rises. And then when the actual event happens, or the facts are now known, oftentimes the price dumps. And I'm leaning towards that's probably what will happen here. But normally it's like a 90% chance that the price is going to dump, and only a 10% chance that it's going to continue up. Or that's just what I've seen in the last 5 years. Is only about 10% of the time does the price continue climbing after the event happens. What makes this one a little bit different is that there's money on the sidelines that aren't getting into ETH, even though they'd like to. And some of it is because of the energy narrative. And they don't want to touch something that's a proof of work, where they can be accused of being like not environmentally friendly or environmentally conscious. And they would like to get into ETH. And so what we don't know is how much money is sitting on the sidelines. And is that event enough that then they feel like they can put it on the books? If so, then the money will, ETH price will continue to climb, because then that's kind of the trigger for them to get in. Now, whether that's enough of a trigger for them to get in, that's really hard to tell. I wish I knew those money managers and all the decisions exactly that they were weighing. So I would still give it maybe a 70% chance that it then declines after the event, and only a 30% chance that it climbs, which is actually 3 times higher than the normal 10% chance that companies have of things continuing to go up. I remember Cardano last year was really the high price and leading into some big announcements at their convention and a big upgrade. And then as soon as those things happened, the price just started a long downward climb. Solana, the same thing, leading up to their convention, and a whole bunch of announcements last year were going to happen, and then started a long downhill climb. ETH, we'll see how this comes together. It really is a big deal that the ETH merge is about to happen. And literally since 2015, the team has been talking about going to a proof of stake model and how to get there. And it's a really difficult thing for them to do with billions and billions of dollars on the ETH network. So it's exciting to be here. And you'll be able to say, look, if you're here now, like 20 years from now, everyone will be talking about Bitcoin and ETH and some of the other cryptocurrency projects. And they'll be like, wow, you were around during the ETH merge. And you are, because this is going to be a historic event. And if it's successful, it'll keep ETH vibrant and alive for probably forever.
Brilliant. That sounds exciting. I mean, it's the crypto assets, they're not going to go away. This technology is so new that it's just most people really don't understand it or know how it will help us. It's, as we've said before, it's like the beginning of the internet. Nobody really knew what it was going to be. I mean, I remember talking to somebody about YouTube and them saying, well, why do you want to put videos of people on YouTube? It's like, what's that? And it's like, well, you never know what it's going to become. And now you see what the business morphs into. And that's the exciting thing about all these projects. You never really know where they're going to take you. But you can know that this is groundbreaking. So it will go in cycles, and some of those cycles will be affected by what's happening in the macro environment. But I do think long term that it is very exciting. So yeah. So you asked about Cardano. So let's pop that up there as well. So this, I think we looked at it last week, and the setup here is looking like what we call a descending triangle, which is not a particularly bullish setup. In fact, it's quite the opposite. It's bearish. But in its favor, it hasn't actually completed the pattern as yet. And I've seen a few of these in the crypto market where they've looked ready to go and they haven't actually completed. They've continued in the opposite direction. So I'm just going to get this set up for you to show you what I mean. So a descending triangle is when, if you imagine you drop a rubber ball and it bounces, and then each bounce it loses a bit of energy, and then it goes further and further down. Well, in terms of markets, this can happen, and then the market breaks the low and continues in a downward trend. So it's reflecting how every rally is being sold into. So each retracement is being sold into, and then the market takes the low out and capitulates, and the market goes lower. So at the moment, we're in this potential, what we call descending triangle, but it hasn't completed. And as I say, some other markets have looked like they're going to break lower like this and not done that at all. They've reversed and they've gone up. So Matic being one of them. And as I said at the top of the show, the market is very fragmented. There are some leaders and there's some laggers. And unfortunately, this is still a lagger. So what we need here is for a break of this resistance line. So this is the resistance line that demarcates every time the market rallies where sellers come in. I know it's got 2 points to it, but it generally sits above all the price action. If it can break above there, then we can start to talk about a potential low and all this price action as a base. So as it was going up here, we needed it to break this 0.687 area to complete a base to then turn bullish. Obviously, it hasn't done that. It's fallen. I mean, to be fair, it's not fallen through the low, but it has made a lower high, which is not a great sign. But it's still, the nicest thing you can say about it at the moment is that it's still in a range. So it's not trending down, it's just consolidating. So we need to see it break out. And given the pressure on the market generally, I'd be a bit concerned that it's going to go lower.
Yeah.
But further out, you know, I do think eventually these will all turn around as well. So possibly when the dollar reverses its trend and interest rates go down.
That'll be an exciting time. For those that haven't experienced the crypto market taking off, it literally feels like a rocket ship strapped to your back. And you see your portfolio, you know, just going up like crazy. And you can't wait to get up in the morning and check like Blockfolio or something, your portfolio, and see where the numbers are at. Those times happen massively, like once every 4 years. Sometimes there's a double peak cycle, which I think this might really have been. We have had a big run up in March, but it was kind of a muted run up. And so I wonder if that wasn't cut a little bit short. It came a little bit early. Because it came so early, it was cut short and leads into a bigger cycle that happens later after lots of pain period. And so
that's really interesting. That's really interesting you say that.
That's still my thesis. Some people are thinking, nope, that was our bull run, and we won't have another massive bull run till after the next Bitcoin halving, which happens in 2024. I think they're wrong on that, and I think it's going to happen much, much sooner. Funny enough, the market usually catches people off guard. So if everybody's expecting that, it's probably not how it's going to happen. Some viewer suggestions. So if you have suggestions you want us to look at next week, if you would go ahead and put them in the comments section below, up to 2 for us to look at. And I love it when you write something you want us to look at. I wanted to read a comment from last week. This is Dror. He says, "Hey guys, needless to say, I'm absolutely addicted to Thursday's show. I do have one suggestion. Can you please say on each coin how high it can get on the bull run and explain why?" That's risky territory. This goes a long way in helping us allocate our investments. For next week, please cover ByEconomy. Essentially, it's a platform. I see what I love about his comment is he writes out what he likes about this. And this really helps us. He says, essentially, it's a platform for games developers. I really like the space, the narrative, and the vision. Also, I always prefer investing in infrastructure. In addition, I hear that so far its product is well received by the market. I do wonder how high it can go with a fully diluted market cap of 0.5 billion already. as I'm currently looking for projects for a real chance for 100x. Many thanks. All right, ByEconomy. If we could take a look at that one.
Yeah, I've got that Prime. So what do they do?
I'll show in just a sec. Maybe I can show it right away.
Yeah, I mean, if you want me to look at the chart,
I'll go into the fundamentals real quick, and it'll give you an idea before we get into the technicals. So this is ByEconomy, a little bit about where the chart. So it looks like the token became tradable right near the end of last year, and it was as high as $14. A lot of times during the early phase, that when a project first launch has really squeezed number of tokens, like very compressed token supply, and so you'll often see the price shoot up but then come right back down. Sometimes that shoot up isn't tracked in the early days of CoinMarketCap tracking it, or even CoinGecko. So all we see is this big fall off, and so it's all the way down under 50 cents. If you go to their website gives us an idea a little bit more what it is. Next gen multi-chain relayer protocol, which I'm sure we all completely understand what the heck they're saying there. When I say that, I'm joking because I don't know what they're saying there. Like,
where's Manu when you need him?
A bunch of big fancy words, right? We're next gen multi-chain relayer protocol. I mean, I kind of understand. Multi-chain meaning across multiple chains. Relayer protocol, I guess that kind of makes sense. Here's what caught my attention, though. They're backed by Binance. So this looks like their investor list. Backed by Binance, Coinbase Ventures. Yeah, so this is a big deal, right? Mechanism Capital. But these two investors right here are a really big deal because they usually, number one, I think CZ over at Binance is absolutely brilliant. In Coinbase, a lot of the stuff they back ends up being not just successful, but very successful. So this is a fantastic suggestion. I have not had my eyes on this. I did watch the video that they have down here. It really didn't tell me a lot, so I'm going to have to do a little bit more research on this, but this is probably one I'm going to start following that wasn't on my radar, that I'm going to make a note of to start tracking this one because and learning more about it. So fantastic suggestion by one of our viewers.
Yeah, well, thank you. I mean, I love the name ByEconomy. If that's I mean that's a start, isn't it? But where it really becomes important is how is the market trading? And to answer your question, first of all, about how high can a market go, I would never give a target because we just don't know. And there's no point saying, well, it could go to $30 or $50 or $100 or $1,000, or maybe not at all, because we just don't know. But what we can say is that as you're following the market, you can look for signs that that market is going to reverse. So there's an expression in what I use, which is something called Dow theory, which says a trend is assumed to be in effect until it gives a clear signal that it has reversed. And this is the downward trend at the moment. So the question is, how low can it go? Well, again, I don't know how low it can go, in the same way that I don't know how high it can go, but I will look for signs that the trend is reversing. And that tells me when it's time to buy. Now, it's interesting that we're looking at Cardano before we looked at this one, because you can see what's going on here. We've got a very similar pattern, this descending triangle, which shows that the peaks are being sold into. So each rally is being sold into, and we're sitting on flat support. Now, you could try and draw it from this low here. So some people might call that another type of pattern, which is a similar symmetrical triangle. It's got less points to it, but it doesn't really matter. Both are still pointing to the downside. So at the moment, I'm going to say, wait on this, because it's sitting within a pattern that is usually quite bearish, and it needs to confirm a reversal before I would step in. Now, just to give you a handle, if you're new to watching the show, I prefer to wait until a basic formed, even if that means that I've missed the low, for the comfort or the probability that the market has reversed. Because usually if the market has reversed, it won't just go up a little bit, it'll go up a lot. So there should be a big upward trend once it eventually reverses. So I don't need to try and catch the low. I can wait for it to have formed, and then when the market is doing the opposite of this to the upside, then I will try and jump on that trend. Now, I do that because there are people out there like you who are really smart and know when there's great technology and knows when to invest in it and knows when they're a bargain. And that's what I'm relying on, the market telling me that something is really good, but what they're telling me here is they're not sure. Either they're bearish or they're not sure. So I need to wait for this to reverse, break this resistance line. That will be my first tripwire to tell me, hang on a minute, it's breaking out of this potentially bearish pattern. And just because it looks bearish, it doesn't guarantee it will go down. As Jay will tell you, there's no guarantee in anything. It's just all probability. But that's the first step: breaking this downward trend line, breaking this resistance at 75 cents. So for me, I'd feel more comfortable at buying it over 90 cents than buying it at 49. Now you might say that sounds crazy, but that's how trends work. Just because something is low, for me, it still needs to confirm that it's in a reversal before I can step in. So for the moment, that's the wait.
Yeah, great call. For me, it's a wait too, just because I'm not sure that this downtrend on it is over. Sometimes the first year, year and a half, or 2 years, there's a lot of token investing that continues. And I don't know tons on the fundamental side about this. I did about 10 minutes of research before the video today. And so I can't say I have a strong feeling about it. I really like the backers to it. And so for me, the concern is if it breaks down out of that trend, it's going to get a lot cheaper. Your bigger question about what things can possibly 100x, like could this, its current market cap of 90 million, could it's possible. Realize though that 18% of the token supply is out there, and probably more of this is going to filter into this. And so even if the price doesn't change, this market cap will go up by more tokens coming into the circulating supply. And so like taking this 100x from where the current market cap is would be a $9 billion market cap. Is that possible? Probably. But imagine this does get cheaper and it goes to half this. This would put the market cap at half this. And then the probabilities are a lot higher for a possible 100x should the rains come in and everything in the crypto market goes up like crazy, which is really the periods that I wait for taking profits and gains outright. Is I like to buy low, trying to buy as low as I can, and then wait for those periods that it goes in. And sometimes that means I'm holding for 2 months. Sometimes it means I'm literally holding for 12 months, 24 months, or 36 months. So yeah, great suggestion. Thank you for that. Let's take a look at Copi, Cornucopias. And they just did a land sale that was very successful. This team's done a great job. They are the only AAA level game I'm aware of on the Cardano ecosystem.
Yeah. So, right. So ignoring the obvious price spikes that we've got here, which I'm assuming are incorrect. So occasionally you get that where non-traded prices get accidentally printed into the data. Yeah. So overall, this chart is still a wait for me. The trend is still down. We don't have a reversal pattern. The trend is assumed to be in effect until it gives a signal that it has reversed, and there's no signal for me as yet. We could draw in a very simple downward trend line starting from here. I have to cut through this price action because I'm assuming it's incorrect. I wouldn't normally want to do that. But that's the main trend line. So for me, it needs to get over that trend line for the first step of when I think it's worth buying. And it hasn't done that. And it's well below, and it's actually moving into a new low. So that's a bit of a red flag as well for me. So at the moment, unless that's an old chart. Let me just double check. No, it's the right date and everything. So yeah, unfortunately, it's still in a downward trend. We're going to have to wait.
Okay, for Paul, that is a wait. And for me, that trend is concerning, right? So absolutely, it broke below the previous low and looks like it's going to go some more downwards. Do I like this one long term? I like the team. I've invited them on the show multiple times. They've been fantastic. Their communication is very strong. Video games cost a lot of money to develop, so they did a token raise. They've done some NFT sales to fund their development, and I'm pleased with how that seems to be coming along, how they update the community. I really like these guys. I hope the game is a ton of fun. With games, you kind of don't know until it's out and playable. And even then, sometimes the first playable edition, sometimes it's great, sometimes it's not. But this is one I definitely hold. I bought a ton of their land, and I hold a ton of their tokens. So am I buying more at this price? No, I'm not. Yeah. Would I buy more? Yeah, I do have a ton already. Would I buy more? Yeah, at a price that makes, like, one of the things I like about this price, even though I would say generally wait, is that it is tradable on the Cardano marketplace, and there isn't a bridge between, you can buy it right now on the Binance Smart Chain, or you can buy it on the Cardano DEX. What's interesting is on the Cardano DEX, it's like 4 to 6 times higher in price. And so, and right now there's no bridge between it. You can't send your Binance Smart Chain tokens over to the Cardano network. Once that opens up, if you had loaded up on the Binance Smart Chain, there'll be some arbitrage opportunities between the two, right? So that's kind of exciting to look forward to. And that's the only case for buying it now. But like generally that the chart just looks like it's going to go down more to me. And even though I really believe in this one long term, which is why I hold so much of the token and especially the land, yeah, I mean, why not get it cheaper if it's going to take a dip lower?
Yeah, this 1.5 cents level for me, I think is really key, because you can see how it acted as support, dipped below it, tried to rally. There may have been, well, what looked like an inverse head and shoulders forming here, and so this is why I put this line in here. That's really what it needed to break for a basing pattern, but that formed part of the downward trend. So sort of this downward trend is the first trigger. Then recovering this 1.5 cents would be important. Things are motoring if we can get through this old head and shoulders trigger as well. So it's got a lot of work to do to turn around, but anything in that space I find very interesting. So perhaps there'll be a capitulation, sharp move, everyone gets shaken out, and then we can come in and buy it even cheaper, because there is a reversal pattern that is called a spike, and that's when you get a really sharp move down, but then the market reverses it quickly, and that's usually the sort of clear out phase where everyone gets pushed out of their positions on, say, some form of broader panic, but then longer term buyers come in and say, hey, this is just too cheap, and start looking at long term trends and opportunities, and they jump in. But we haven't got that yet, so if we see it, we'll let you know. But for the moment, it's a downward trend.
Yeah, and just remember that they still are distributing tokens to pre-sell investors on this. How much longer that continues, I'm not sure. But there was a distribution, maybe 3 weeks ago. So that means if it's still distributing, there might be another one in a week. So that puts downward sell pressure on it, as well as what's interesting is they had their land sale going up, and some people who are interested in their land sale, in order to free up some money to be able to buy it at the land sale, well, they had to sell some of their tokens. So that actually put additional sell pressure on the token too, and that might have been what cracked the price below what had been that floor, and now we're seeing some lower lows. Cool. Let's take a look over at OMI. Yes. I love looking at OMI.
Okay, so this one is again in this consolidation. It was off to the races over here. It was broken through a low. We'd seen a consolidation, a breakout. It looked like it was going to become quite a lot more exciting. Then sideways trading, again, we would allow for that, but a sharp move back into this trend line is something I think we've got to be a bit cautious about. Volume has gone up a lot. Like I'm not sure what's going on here, why volume has jumped so much in the past few days. So maybe that's an indication of something that I just don't know about. But that seems a bit unusual that the price hasn't moved a lot, but volume's gone up a lot. So I'd like to think that there's some positive event coming up and people are loading up ahead of it. But from a technical perspective, it is not making a descending triangle or anything like that. It's more just in a broader basing formation. So I need to see this turning around and moving back up into this area here, potentially taking out this level here to form a big double bottom. Because we know, although there's not all the price data here, we know it's come from a higher level, i.e. the trend was down to this point. So it's trying to reverse a longer term downward trend. I think I have to stay neutral on this and just say wait for now. But it is always one that we find interesting, and it's doing better than some of the other coins as well. It's kind of in between. So if you think, say, Bitcoin's looking bearish and Ethereum's looking bullish, this is sort of halfway between the two. So that's why it has to be a wait for now.
Yeah. I did just buy some more of this last week. I hadn't noticed those volume spikes. Oh my gosh. Now there is something fundamentally going on with this, Paul, that's really interesting. So the token itself for forever hasn't had a real utility, just a future promise of utility and some ideas of how they were going to use the token. And so the VV platform, which is put out by ECOMI, has been very successful. It has some of the best intellectual property on it for collectibles. So they had the first Batman on the blockchain. I think the first Superman, the first Darth Vader collectible. And so if you think about them, some of the first big NFTs or collectibles on the blockchain are on their app. And so the app and what they've released on it has done very, very well. And a lot of these collectibles have sold exceptionally well. And some of them have had incredible price increases. Like last March, I covered the first Batman on the blockchain, and it was selling on their app for $80 at the time. And it was limited to I think 8,000 of them. And, and I talked about them a couple different times, gosh, this is a big deal. It literally went 200x in price. And so it's since retraced. It's all the way down to $1,200, which is what, 15x from its original price, which is still really, really high. But the token itself, which the company used to fund really themselves getting started when they did their pre-sale back in 2018, the token hasn't had so much of a utility yet. Well, it's about to get that in the coming months, and it's not clear exactly when, just that it's coming. And so seeing that price or the volume spike, that is indicating to me that at these lows, some of the whales have just been scooping it up. Anytime, some people are getting panicked and they're selling, that that they are just picking it up and they're as happy as a kid in a candy store, is what that chart is saying to me is going on. And I hadn't seen that price spike increase. And to me, that means I'm going to be buying more. I have some money on the sidelines. I'm a big fan of this long term. Every crypto project is a risk. This project is one of the lower risks of a lot of the stuff that I follow, in my own opinion. So that doesn't mean it can't fail. Any project can fail. You can have the founders get arrested for whatever crazy thing. There can be some infighting. There can be some internal theft. all kinds of things that could destroy a project. So don't think that, like, when I say it's low risk by my perspective, that there's no risk. That's never the case, especially in crypto. A lot of this technology is early. These companies are early. Something could always happen, but I just like the risk profile versus the potential return. So for me, this is a buy, and I'm going to pick up some more actually.
Exciting.
Yeah, now it could go lower, right? What has me so exciting is I've kind of been waiting on the sidelines, hoping that it would get a little bit cheaper than where it's at. But me now looking at those volume increases, that's what's got my attention. That sometimes that happens. You see these big volume spikes, and then all of a sudden the price just skyrockets. And if they call it the OMI utility program, or OUP, people refer to it, that gives the token some use case. So some of those use cases are like you stake OMI, like you buy it, and then you stake it on the platform in order to reach a certain level that gives you an advantage in getting in on some of the important collectible drops that maybe demand on that drop is way higher than the supply. But then if you have a certain amount staked, you get an advantage towards that drop. And so at that point, a lot of collectors who like the VV app and are buying the collectibles but have no ECOMI token might start buying a ton of the ECOMI token. And so if that use case comes to fruition and it's good, what will happen is a Medium article will probably be released explaining exactly how it's going to be used. If people look at that and say, oh my gosh, this is going to drive massive demand for the OMI token, all of a sudden, probably they will start buying a whole bunch and the price just shoots up.
Cool.
Awesome. So for me, I think I already hit this, but yeah, for me, that's a buy. All right, let's take a look at, next up we have Jasmy, which we looked at not too long ago.
Yeah. So was that Jasmy coin or was it just Jasmy? I think this might be the
Jasmy
one.
coin.
Yeah. Okay. So let's go back. Jasmy coin.
Yep.
That's the one. Yeah. That I had.
Why that happens, I don't know. Why they just like the tracking just falls off.
Yeah, that's on Coin Paprika, so it's obviously no longer there. But let's try. Yeah, so it's still called Jasmy Coin on this exchange. So perhaps if we could check if that's the right level. Yeah, it's just called something slightly different. So this is, I mean, this is one of the most compressed charts I've seen in a long time. You can see where this major low is, and it's literally bouncing on this low, bouncing along this low without actually breaking it. And what's interesting about that is when you're expecting in what we call a continuation pattern, the market to continue downwards. So if I can, I'll get rid of the auto so we can just move in a bit closer to the price action. So you can see how if we take it from this point here, this was descending price action. It was continuing to descend. In terms of timing, you would have expected it to at least have broken down here because it's gone sideways to down. And then if you're going to sell it, you're going to sell it. So why is it going back up again? I don't know. It's just strange, really. So the timing for a descending triangle is gone, and it looks more like it's just consolidating in a range. Where it needs to break out before we can get excited about potentially it being bullish would be over this 0.0119 point, because it's 1, 2, 3 levels of resistance there. Those 3 levels of resistance are key. The fact that it's tried to do it 3 times and failed. Anything that's so close to a prior low, it's definitely a wait for me, because there's not much that could tip it over the edge and shoot it lower. So I've got to be cautious. I've really got no choice. But if we could take out this resistance point that it's tried to do on 3 occasions, then we'd have a bit of a barrier between that price action and what is the all-time low on the chart. So the only comfort I've got here is that it hasn't already broken lower, even though some other markets have. and it's holding on to what is very significant support that goes back as far as July 21. That is really massive support there that it's hanging on to. So it's sort of by the fingernails, but that's really not enough for me to want to step into it.
Yeah, thank you. Looking at a few things on this. Let me share my screen. First of all, their market cap's at 41 million. For those that are new, the reason I always look at the market cap is because the price of the token doesn't tell us very much. We have to understand how many tokens are actually out there in circulation. Multiply that times the price of the token. Because in some cases, it seemed like, oh, this token's 1 cent and this other one's $10. So I'm going to buy a lot of the 1 cent one, not realizing that the one that has $10 might have far, far, far less in supply, which means it's actually cheaper than the one that's selling for 1 cent. And so you get a true idea of the true price when you figure out what the market cap is. Well, the market cap, meaning the total number of tokens in circulation times the price, is 42 million. And that's actually decently high, given that we've been in this crypto winter type pullback. So where has it been in the past? Well, it's been as high, if we go to the max on the chart, it's been as high as $4. Now, what's interesting about that was clear in the last year, in March, when prices absolutely took off. Another thing interesting about that, when we talk about market cap, realize that one of the other things I look at as a potential pitfall is, what is the current circulating supply versus the total supply? What I see here is less than 10% of the token is in circulation, meaning there's another 90% out there that will probably come into circulation at some point, which kind of dilutes the value and puts downward price pressure on things. So that's a concern. Now, trying to look more at this, well, I don't know about you, but I don't speak a ton of, I think this is Japanese. Maybe I'm wrong on that. But I didn't install I'm just really careful about what I put on. I didn't install the Google Translate, which was available, which probably would have translated all of this so that I can learn more about it. Some other interesting things about it, though, is there's a lot of people very interested in this, and it sold for a really high price. So there's probably something really good about this project that I don't necessarily know what it is. There are some concerns. The small amount of tokens actually in circulation, less than 10%. The market cap is still reasonably high for this market, which is 41.5 million for something that I haven't heard of. Well, other than it's been suggested here before, and we've looked at it before. It's near lows, and so it's probably going to continue, maybe even exploring new lows. So for me, this is definitely a wait, unless I knew something so strong about this that has me bullish. Like, we just looked at ECOMI, and the chart, normally, if I were just looking at that chart and didn't know more on the fundamental side, I would have just looked at that chart and said, I'm just going to wait. The only reason I'm going to buy is, well, the chart looked okay. The volume spike tells me something is going on there with some people selling off, but on the flip side, some people buying. And the ECOMI utility program is coming. So I don't know Jasmy at a deep enough level to know if for some reason I'd buy. So I just have to look at the chart and say, probably going to go lower. All right. Thank you for all our great suggestions so far. We still have World Mobile Token in Fina. Why don't we take a look at World Mobile Token?
Yeah, sure. Right, here we go. I'm going to try the first one, see whether that works, which it seems to work. Yeah, that's fine. 7th of September. So what can we say? I mean, everything seems to be compressed in a downward trend. This is no different, really. What makes it stand out? Not very much, I have to say. I think we're going to have to wait on this one. It's been a week of waits, unfortunately. What's the reason for that? Well, we've still got declining highs, and until these highs are reversed, I've got to be cautious. So if we look at where the low of the market is, the low here at this point, 11th of May, what I was mentioning before was when you get this big spike sell-off and then long-term investors come in and start buying, that's the sort of thing you'd expect to see, a really sharp downward move at the end of a trend and then a reversal. So this area here, we got a sign of that, and pretty high volume as well. So there was some buying coming in around this area here, which reversed this trend. At least it was a sign that the trend was turning around. But unfortunately, that unfolded into a new downward trend, and it tried to take out the low, and then that low was rejected. So clearly people thought, well, that's just way too cheap, let's get in. But since then, all we've done is pivot around this low, which is why I wanted to show you this level. So we're pivoting above and below and above and below, but with the highs getting lower, that's really not enough again for me to get bullish on it. I need to see this downward trend line break and for it to reverse this pattern of declines to a pattern of rising lows and rising highs. Again, the only positive I can say is that it's at least holding on to these lows. At least it's not trending down, which is what it was doing before. But for now, I'd have to wait. Where I would be more interested in buying it, obviously, is a break of this trend line. This resistance is fairly close, so I'd be possibly waiting a bit more for it to break a slightly higher level at 25 cents. So if it gets through 25 cents, next resistance point above that is 26 cents. So the resistance points are very close together. So it needs to take out both of those for it to complete a more interesting base or some form of acceleration, which we will talk about one day because we will see that. But for the moment, I've got to be uber cautious on it and say it's a wait.
Yeah, thanks, Paul. For me, it's a wait too. I do want to understand more about this project, and I saw a video on it quite a while ago, but I haven't kept up to date on the fundamentals behind it. It is a Cardano ecosystem project, which has my interest there. They have something to do with a new way of doing cell phone towers and how cell phones get paid for, if I'm understanding right. And they're building out a lot of places with poor infrastructure on this new World Mobile Token Network. And so I want to understand it more. I just reached out again to somebody I know that knows the team. And I'd reached out to them before, and they were out of the country on vacation. So they should be back now. Hopefully they can put me in touch with the team, and I can have them on for an interview. This is one I want to know more. Just looking at the chart, I don't see any reason for me to get in. Sometimes I do buy when they hit that lower trend line, which it's not at. Even though sometimes you buy at that lower trend line and it breaks lower. The reason I do that is because I'm very well diversified, and sometimes I'm just there's 18,000 or more altcoins out there, and I can't keep track of everything. And so when I do see one that I really love fundamentally and it's at a pretty good price, sometimes I go ahead and pull the trigger on it, because I found sometimes I just totally miss the charts looking at them when it's clear or the probabilities are extremely high for a big break out to the upside. And so to counter that, sometimes I just buy at levels that I'm pretty happy with. And then if it gets cheaper, I just put more in. This would be one that I'd probably be interested in enough on a fundamental level to do that. I don't own any of it yet. But for my own research and for all of you, I'd like to see if I could bring them on the channel for an interview to find out more on a deeper fundamental level so I can start tracking this one more closely. So for me, it's just a wait looking at that too. And for Paul, it was a wait.
Yeah.
All right, let's jump over to our last one, which
is Fina.
Yeah.
Fina. Okay. So that's Defina Finance is the first one that comes up. I'm assuming that that's right. Okay. It's not updated. Let's have a look. Let's try it on Coin. Yeah, if that's
it is Defina Finance.
Yeah, so if that's the one, Yeah. So this trend is basically, well, it has an update. It's got an update for yesterday, but not update for today. I wonder why that is. So without today's update, which I'm not sure why it's got that, unless something very significant has happened to turn this around, the trend is still um, the trend is still downwards. So for the moment, I think you'd have to wait for this main downward trend line to break before we would look for a reversal. So yeah, that's a relatively clear trend. Now it could be that the market is, I mean, if it's in the finance space, which obviously is suggested by its name, the whole sector's under pressure, which means that at some point it will all turn around. But for the moment, it's pretty much in line with the cyclical nature of the rest of the market. So it'd have to be a wait for me.
Yeah, looking at that chart, I knew that wouldn't be your type of chart. There's nothing about that tells Paul, no, I'm getting in. There's nothing about that I love about it either. A few things on the way I look at it. Let me share my screen. It's tradable on PancakeSwap and MEXC, Bitmart, BKEX. So likely, if I were to buy some, I'd buy it on PancakeSwap. Now, why would I buy now? I frankly wouldn't. It did release not too long ago, so earlier this year. So it's going through this vesting curve where its tokens are vesting. Unfortunately, on CoinGecko, we don't get anything about circulating supply. We see max supply is only 100 million, which isn't all that many of a token. And so at max with 100 million, that means if all of the tokens were in supply, it'd be a $1.4 million market cap. So that's actually pretty small on the market cap. But I just fundamentally don't know anything about why this is going to do really well. So Defina, it says total NFT assets locked in game. Okay, so clearly this is some kind of game, but the name was
okay,
Defina Finance, which is interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a bit strange.
Okay, so it's this turn-based game, kind of like Axie Infinity is, which is the fastest type of game towards development. They can be, kicked out pretty fast. Looks like you can upgrade things. So there's some substance to this. This is a good suggestion. I just don't know that much about it. This is the first time I'm hearing about it. Let's look at the investor list. Quobi invested in it. OKX. Moonwhale. Well, I'm liking this. Wow. Okay. Cetify. Foresight Ventures. Okay. They're probably just going through their vesting curve, and that's why the token is dropping. I think that's Engine Starters logo. I'm not quite sure. Yeah. I like it better. Thank goodness we checked out their website. So
yeah, I think it's a really important point you're making there, because even if you've got a suggestion that the market isn't in an upward trend, it's still nice to see it and see these markets regularly, because of course things change. That's the nature of the market, isn't it? So it's nice to see a market like this and with potential to reverse and go higher than not see it at all. So, please keep the suggestions coming. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, when this one launched, it really went high. Look at this. It went almost to $10. Of course,
Yeah.
it had a very squeezed token supply. They usually do, but it had quite a nice launch. So remember, this is when Metaverse made their announcement. And so this happened to launch right before Facebook made their announcement. And it absolutely shot up with that. It's since corrected. Now, can it 100x from here? It could. So, gosh, I almost need to write this one down. So there's two from today I need to write down just to try to keep an eye on. That chart looks disastrous in the short term, meaning it's likely going to keep heading lower. Probably tokens are vesting. And here's the incentives of the pre-sale investors who probably made a killing here, that they might have had only 2 or 5 or 10% of their tokens out, and they were able to sell them and make an absolute fortune. So oftentimes what then happens, they've already made their money back plus a whole bunch of profits. So when that happens, sometimes when they get their tokens, they just immediately turn around and sell them, which just continues to push the price down, which is great for investors like me. I wasn't involved in the pre-sale on this, that when things get pushed down like this, then I sometimes take that opportunity to start buying. Is this a terrible price? Yeah, not a $1.4 million total market cap. And if there weren't so many great options available to buy, I might even just take a small allocation in this. But for me, it's just a wait, because
I see why you're tempted just to like put your toe in the water. Just
it's so cheap that, like, if this game does well, and it's an if, there's a lot of games coming out on blockchain. There's a lot of gamers that aren't sold on the blockchain idea. And so it's unclear exactly how the absorption of a lot of these games are going to go. But, you know, that market cap, that fully diluted market cap of 1.4 million, if I did my math right, starts to look pretty attractive. So that's why I want to keep an eye on this, because maybe it gets even cheaper and it goes down to half this price. And so if I put something small in it, like $200 or $300, then I'm not out much at all if it goes terrible. As a fraction of my portfolio, for some people, $300 is a chunk of their portfolio. And it used to be a much bigger chunk for me when I was new, but I'm no longer new. I've been in this for 5 years. So that kind of allocation is money that if I lose, no sweat. I've had things that I put $70,000 in and lost it. So, you know, $300. But then the upside, if it goes 200x from there, well, okay, cool. You know, that's then what, $60,000 out of $300. So I'm just going to wait a little bit longer, but this is probably one I would put some in, especially looking at the backers on that has my interest. Fantastic suggestions from our viewers. Thank you so much. Yeah, some of the ones that I followed closely over time have come as suggestions from our viewers. So thank you, everyone that have put your suggestions in. Thank you, Paul, for joining us. We really appreciate your insights, your input, and what you're seeing, especially your macro breakdown on what you're seeing happening there.
Always a pleasure. Thanks, guys. Look forward to next week.
Now, remember, the crypto market is slow right now, and it can feel painful. It just feels painful. Yeah, when prices are low, it's the time that we should be the most excited, but fair to say should is an interesting word, because we're emotional creatures, not logical creatures. And the reason we're not excited when prices are so low so often is because, well, we probably already taken positions, and then we're looking at those existing positions as being down, which can be very frustrating. And this is just the human part of buying in a down cycle. Now, the key to getting rich is buying low and selling high. In order to buy low, you pretty much are buying in a down cycle, right? And then you're waiting till an up cycle that you can then sell it. That doesn't mean, though, the reason that 95% of people don't buy low is because it's harder to be here. Why? Because you might have taken some, you'll think in the future you'll be so happy you took those positions, but right now they might be down 50%. They might even be down 60 or 70% or more, and you're just frustrated. That's normal. That's what I felt like last crypto winter. Just know you're in the right place at the right time, and good decisions made during these pullbacks lead to life-changing ones when the market does turn around, and it does. Now, this wrap is for all of you to reinforce the principles I share that make all the difference in higher returns.
To the space, chasing all of the gains, chasing the pumps and all of the hype trains. But like in life, you buy before you could. Was told to buy when it was pouring like a Rainmaker should. I buy when it's down, don't chase the boats that I missed. Cause I always made the time in mind. I take the one out cause I'm patient like that. And I'll wait for the right time. I sell when it's high, I buy when it's low. They call me rich, they call me smart. I'm just a Rainmaker running the show. Calculated investments, I don't leave with my heart. The principles are simple, to leave in a lot. Buy when it's boring, just gotta be smart. I sell when it's hype, like all the channels they pump it. That's when I was selling, go parabolic and dump it. They call me rich, they call me smart. I'm a rainmaker, making my own start. I'm with the future, learning the past. Makes the time fly by, years going so fast. The game plan is mine, I'll own it now. When I reach the top, haters asking me how. Cause I'm a rainmaker, investments I love. And I follow what I learn, not relying on luck. Time is never better, the time like the present. This next 5 years is a gift and it's feeling like heaven. I'm committed to learn, to study and to know that nothing comes easy but with knowledge the game show. Sticking out this road cause soon will come a bear market. Learning and growing and when it's slow will be the target. They say it's come out, Bitcoin is dead. The massive decreases can get to your head. Sticking around, the time is better. Strong like that, I'll let the others be fretters. 2 years time the bull will bring back the gains. That makes it worth the effort cause here comes the rain. So let's go rainmakers, let's make it all happen. Let go of the hate, let the haters be crapping. I'm here for 5 years, let's do this together. The time is right, the time could be better. They call me rich, they call me smart. I'm a rainmaker, making my own start. I'm with the future, learning the past. Makes the time fly by, years going so fast. This game plan is mine, I'll own it now. When I reach the top, haters asking me how. Cause I'm a rainmaker, investments I love. And I follow what I learn, not relying on luck. Haters be hating, the time to slow down. Addressing what they say when I'm wearing my crown. They're chasing green candles like someone who was new. I got a vision that was bigger, helping me to push through. I'm still human and sometimes it is rough. And that's what makes me special, simply I stay tough. Cause I'm a rainmaker, investments I love. And I follow what I learn, not relying on luck.